Hey YouTube, this is another feedback video on patch 2.0, and while I was rather harsh last time when we talked about the usage of AI for icons and that sparked a little controversy, today I want to be a little more helpful and show some issues that we have in the game where I think there are fixes possible and the team can work on it. So this video is more of a finger point towards problems that they can do. And it's also a problem that affects more people, and I would say this is a problem that affects all of us because it starts with performance. Performance was an issue in Warcraft 3 Reforged since the very beginning. While Classic is super crisp and super clean, Reforged was always a little sloggy. It felt like you're threading through water, and this is the case here as well, because if you use Classic HD graphics, this is part of the Reforged graphic setting, and the behavior is unfortunately more or less the same. I compared the Warcraft RPS that I have to other games that either came out recently or got a remaster recently. Stormgate got heavily criticized also by me for bad performance. After a patch, I now get between 120 and 160 at game start. For Classic Warcraft 3, I get 200. It's perfect. And it's also very steady. For Warcraft 3 Classic HD, my FPS are fluctuating a lot, and they are also significantly lower. I've talked to a lot of people, and it seems like the change between HD and SD is about 1/3 of your FPS, which I think is a lot, especially when you compare it to the newly remastered Age of Mythology Retold, where I, with my 5-year-old machine, have very, very steady 140 FPS that are then maxed out, so I can't really check how high it would get if that would be uncapped. But just from this, it is noticeable that the Warcraft 3 Reforged graphic mode has issues. And one issue is definitely noticeable, and I think a lot of melee players will suffer from it, and that is the unoptimized Night Elf base, especially Moonwells. This is a picture of a Night Elf base at the start of a game. I got 126 FPS, that is totally fine. You can see it at the top. So now I build a Moonwell and I drop to 85. I'm losing another third of my FPS after losing 1/3 already that I lost due to the switch to the Reforged graphics mode. So something is wrong with effects and Night Elf buildings. I think it has to do with either the water in the Moonwell or the fact that the water represents how full the Moonwell is, and that check is somewhat flawed. But it's definitely noticeable, and you will encounter a lot of Night Elves on the ladder. You will see a lot of Moonwells. So please, team, check the Moonwells. This is also the case for teched up main trees of Night Elves when there's a lot of effect. So Night Elf base, please fix on top of general optimization for the game. The performance is rather low. The FPS is fluctuating, and we identified a little issue with the FPS if you see things for the first time. That is, any model, if you walk across the map and you see a creep camp for the first time, boom, your FPS goes down. If you scout the enemy base and you see his buildings, boom, the FPS goes down. I don't know if something isn't caching right or if it has to load at that time when it sees the model, but this is really bad, and I think everybody can live with steady lower FPS, like at 120 or something. That is fine. But if your FPS is constantly jumping from 120 down to 80, up to 140, down to 60, that is really annoying and takes away from the flow of the game. So something there isn't right, and I hope the team can identify and fix that for the future, because we would really love to use the Classic HD mode. Another issue is that unfortunately for some users, Mouselag is back. Mouselag makes it so it feels very heavy to move your mouse across the screen. It's like treading through water when you walk. And the game is hard enough as it is when you play melee. So it should feel crisp and it should feel easy. It should feel smooth. We have had this Mouselag in the past couple of years. Again and again and again and again, oftentimes reapplied after a patch. One solution that we had was to add the command line -graphics API direct 3D12. For some reason that I don't know because I'm a tech idiot, this helped with the feel of the mouse. Unfortunately, with patch 2.0, this command line no longer works. While all other command lines seems to work but don't have an effect, this line is completely getting ignored and even leads to an issue saying that the drivers are out of date and you can't launch the game. If you would be able to take a look at that, Blizzard, and re-enable, like fix the Mouselag entirely would of course be the best. But if you could, as a quick fix, take a look at the graphics API so we get our hot fix to the problem back, that'd be dope. Also, I would love to see more mouse accuracy in Reforged graphics mode, including Classic HD. Since the Reforged launch, the mouse has always felt a little off, and I'm not too sure why that is. It could be that it has to do with the cursor, because if you use the Reforged mode, you get the Reforged cursor. And it doesn't seem to be as precise as the classic cursor. So just as a test and for the overall feel of the game, I would love to have the option in my gameplay to have the classic cursor, which would then also fit more to the environment and the models that I use. Another thing that was implemented with patch 2.0 is lighting and shadows. And I think in general, we can agree that the environmental changes have been well received, and especially the shadows got raving reviews. I don't want to take away any of that. I want to show you that there's still some flaws with the shadows and that we can make a good thing even better to optimize it. Because if things aren't right on a visual level, we are taking out of the immersion, and that makes us that has us disconnected from the game. So Trigger Happy, a member of the Hive workshop, has recorded this video for me where it has a tree line and a cliff and the shadows. The shadows are of course a lot better in this patch as they represent the model. It's dynamic, but let's take a look at the behavior of the shadows here when the camera is moved to the right-hand side. Oops. Oops. They kind of disappear. This is not how it's supposed to be, and this is not how we want it. There's definitely an issue with the shadows if you move your camera. This is not only with cliffs, this is universal, basically. So, shadows in Warcraft Classic have always been a black blob beneath the unit. And this has changed now with the dynamic shadows. And while it looks great for the most part and for the shadows themselves, it does disconnect the unit from the terrain for some reason. Take a look at the peons. They are doing their work. And they're walking and they get their footprints and things are fine. This is what we've always seen. They're part of the world. And they feel like they belong in this world. So with patch 2.0, we got this. And first of all, the models look a lot brighter, which has to do with the lighting. That should be fixed, in my opinion. But when the peons walk, they float. This is an issue that games sometimes have when they're in a beta / early / prior to release state, when shadows are there but not perfected and not polished. I don't want my units to float. Please keep in mind that this is not the case for every model and every unit. Units that are mounted, for example, don't really have that. Knights look great, Archmage totally fine, but workers and in general units with smaller lags suffer from this. And there's a little issue in how shadows are displayed in the game. You see here the floating. This is not only me, this has been reported on the Discord a couple of times. So here the direct comparison of a shadow between patch 2.1.36 and 2.0. The black shadow is around the entire unit. It is a little bit cheating game design wise, but it's working, so let them cheat if it's fine. On the patch 2.0 footman, especially around the feet where there's no shadow, it doesn't seem like the unit is realistically standing on the ground, but rather pasted on top of it. And that could create this floating effect that we don't really want to see. I hope that some adjustments can be made to the behavior of shadows and to the look of shadows with certain units so they don't feel out of place, that it doesn't break our immersion, and we want to continue to be in that world. So I would love to see fixes to the brightness of the models, to the shadow behavior in general, and to the floating. I know this is a bit of a bigger task, so I don't expect changes like next week or something, but if they could put it on their list and perfect this, oh man, we're off to a good start. Or to a good... That would be a good follow-up. Let me put that. That would be a good follow-up. One more issue that I have that is not really graphics, but kind of tied to graphics, is something that other content creators have pointed out as well, and that is that the Reforged graphics mode is also forcing the Reforged sounds and voiceovers. Voiceovers have been criticized for a very, very long time, especially the localized voiceovers that were introduced to the game with Reforged. They don't have the same quality as the original ones, and people want their old voice lines back. Some are even hacking the game to put it in. As a melee player, some people need their sounds to recognize effects. I simply don't want to be annoyed by sounds that aren't great. I have a big problem with the sound of fiends. I get this with every fiend shot all the time, while the original sound effect of a fiend is this. It's so much smoother, it's so much softer, and it's way less distracting and doesn't pierce my ear. It would be fantastic if we could have the option in the settings if we want to use classic unit sounds and classic voice lines. That would fit the classic graphics direction, and more options are always great because some people might also love the Reforged sounds. Next up is my last issue, and this is with terrain. The new terrain for melee is wonderful. I want to put in a little disclaimer that I say this for melee, and I know that the custom campaign and the user-generated content community have massive issues with this because some of the terrain got deleted from the game. And I want to point out that content should never really be deleted, but always be accessible. There's videos on that the team can check out. I'm not an expert. So my issue is that the new terrain is creating chessboards. And while we say that Warcraft 3 is chess in real time, I don't want it to look like that. Left-hand side, classic. Right-hand side, patch 2.0. And while it's not immediately noticeable, after some time, you start to realize that on the right-hand side, there's a lot of boxes. Here are some lines to display that. Boom. Horizontally as well. Now, look at where the lines are and look at the terrain. The tiles were definitely up-resed, and this is an effect of that. If you take away the grass and only show the ground, this is becoming way more noticeable as well. So there's lines everywhere, there's boxes everywhere. It's subtle, it's not a massive issue, but I would still love to see an improvement if possible. More issues with the tiles are that some of them, especially on grass, create these black boxes, black pixel errors, and I think some of the tiles need a little bit of a touching up. But that is now seriously going into quality assurance department, and the bigger issues are the shadows on units and the lighting and especially performance. So if we could fix that in a future patch, that would be fantastic. That was my feedback on performance, lighting, environment, shadows, and I will follow this up with another area, probably about multiplayer and UI soon. So follow the channel if you want to see more. And if you have any problems with the topics that I mentioned here, please put them in the comment. If you have something that you have to report about the patch that I should probably comment on, please put it in the comments. Like, subscribe, you know the deal. More content here and back to Warcraft soon. See ya. Oh, and greetings, Witty, who's definitely doing a reaction to this. Mwah.